What if love was waiting for you in the last place you wanted to be? Would you still dare to reach for it? That question burned in Diana Stevens' mind long before she ever knew his name. She hadn't come to South Korea searching for love, but for survival. Love, she told herself, was a luxury only the rich could afford. For a girl like her, Nigerian, foreign, and penniless, it was nothing but a dangerous distraction. The sizzling sound of oil hitting a hot pan snapped her out of her thoughts. Diana stood in the cramped, sweltering kitchen of the Small Soul restaurant where she worked, sweat running down her back as her boss shouted orders in rapid-fire Korean. "Faster, Diana. Are you cooking or sleeping?" She bit her lip, forcing her trembling hands to keep pace. Her school bag, stuffed with books and assignments, sat by the door, mocking her. How long could she keep this up? The endless hours on her feet, the smell of grease clinging to her skin, the late nights spent catching up on her studies. She had come to Korea with a dream, to earn a degree, to prove herself, to rise above the life of limitation she had known back home. But reality was heavier than any dream. Each day felt like drowning. When the shift ended, Diana slipped into the locker room, collapsing on the wooden bench. She pressed her forehead against her knees and whispered to herself, "I can't do this anymore." The next morning, she handed in her resignation. Her boss looked at her with disgust. "Students like you, always weak. Don't expect life to hand you favors." Diana bowed slightly, swallowing her pride. "I'm not weak. I'm just tired." For the first time in months, she walked into the streets of Seoul without the smell of fried food staining her clothes. She breathed in the cool morning air, but with it came the sharp sting of fear. How would she survive without this job? Rent, tuition, food, all loomed like shadows over her. Fate, however, has a way of opening strange doors. Later that week, while scrolling through part-time job postings on her cracked phone, one had caught her attention. Cook needed. Large residence. Meals provided. Excellent pay. Diana hesitated. Something about it felt too good to be true. But desperation drowned her doubts. She applied. 2 days later, she stood in front of the imposing black gates of the Tae family mansion. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress. Marble pillars, sprawling gardens, tall fences meant to keep the world out. The housekeeper eyed her from head to toe before nodding. "You'll start tomorrow. Be on time." And just like that, Diana's life shifted. At first, the mansion felt like another world. The kitchen alone was bigger than her entire apartment. Every step she took echoed against polished floors, every room seemed to breathe secrets. She kept her head down, cooking meals, scrubbing pots, and memorizing the rhythm of the household. But the strangest twist of fate came a week later, when the butler called her into the study. "Miss Stephen," he said in careful English, "you've been recommended for a scholarship." Her heart stopped. Scholarship? To Daejeon High School. The chairman himself approved it. Diana blinked in disbelief. Daejeon wasn't just a school, it was the kingdom of Korea's elite, owned by the very family she now worked for. Sons and daughters of billionaires roamed its halls. She had dreamed of studying in such a place but never dared to believe it possible. And now, here she was, thrust into a world where her poverty would shine like a scar. Her first day at Daejeon was a battlefield. Whispers followed her everywhere. "Who's the foreign girl? Isn't she the maid's daughter or something? Why is she even here?" Then came Jimmy. Handsome, sharp, and dangerous, Jimmy belonged to one of the wealthiest families in Seoul. He was the kind of boy who never heard the word no, and now, he had set his eyes on her. "Hey, new girl," he said one afternoon, leaning against her desk with a cocky smile. "What's your name?" "Diana," she answered quietly, not looking up. "I like it. You should come to lunch with me." "No, thank you." Her refusal wiped the smile off his face. He wasn't used to rejection. From that moment on, Diana wasn't just a student at Daejeon, she was Jimmy's target. But as Diana endured the whispers, the taunts, the heavy weight of being an outsider, she didn't yet know that something else was stirring. Somewhere far away, boarding a flight back to Korea, was the boy who would change everything. Young Tae. The heir who didn't care about his inheritance. The rebel son who refused to bow to tradition. The boy who would look into her eyes for the first time and feel his world tilt. Diana had no idea that love, sweeter and more dangerous than anything she had ever known, was already on its way to meet her. Sometimes the walls that shelter you are the same ones that trap you. Diana had never seen a house like the Tae family mansion. It wasn't just large, it was intimidating, a palace that seemed to breathe wealth with every polished marble step. Even the silence inside had weight, like whispers of secrets too heavy to escape. Her first morning as a cook, she nearly dropped the tray of fruit when she walked into the main dining hall. A chandelier the size of her entire apartment glowed above her, its light reflecting on silver cutlery and glass walls. She had seen places like this only in glossy magazines, never imagining she'd one day walk its corridors, not as a guest but as a worker. "Keep your head down, and don't linger," the head maid warned her. "This house is not for you to admire." Diana nodded. But it was impossible not to wonder what kind of people lived in a place so vast, so carefully built to keep the world outside. 4 days, her life fell into a rhythm: wake before dawn, prepare breakfast, clean, cook lunch, and return to her modest apartment with aching feet. It was hard work, but different from the restaurant. There was dignity here. She was treated with formality, not cruelty. Still, she always felt eyes on her. The butler's disapproving glances, the maid's whispered comments in the hallways. She was a stranger in a kingdom where she didn't belong. But everything changed the day she received the letter. The envelope had the Tae family crest pressed in gold. Her hands shook as she opened it, her heart racing before she even read the first line. "Congratulations, Miss Stephen. You have been awarded a scholarship to Daejeon High School." She sat on her bed that night staring at the words, hardly able to breathe. Daejeon High wasn't just a school, it was the school, a playground of the rich and powerful, a place where the future leaders of Korea sharpened their claws. And now, she, a poor foreign girl with nothing but determination, was about to walk into their world. She should have been grateful. But instead, fear clawed at her chest. "What if I don't fit in? What if I fail?" she whispered to herself, staring at the cracked ceiling. But she had no choice. She had to try. Her first day at Daejeon was a blur of polished shoes, designer bags, and stairs sharp enough to cut glass. The school was breathtaking, with towering buildings, manicured gardens, and classrooms equipped with technology she had never dreamed of. But it wasn't the beauty that unnerved her, it was the people. Everywhere she turned, whispers followed. "Isn't she the maid who works at the Tae mansion? Why is she even here? She doesn't belong." Their words clung to her skin like thorns. She forced herself to keep walking, chin up, though her heart pounded with humiliation. That was when Jimmy appeared. "New girl." The voice was smooth, mocking. Diana turned to find him leaning casually against a pillar, his blazer half-buttoned, his smirk practiced. His expensive watch gleamed under the sunlight as if it existed solely to announce his wealth. "You're Diana, right?" he asked, as though he already owned the answer. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "I like foreign girls. They're different." He let his eyes sweep over her, and Diana's stomach tightened. "You should come sit with me at lunch. I'll show you what it means to belong here." "No, thank you," she said firmly. The smirk faded. Jimmy straightened, his eyes narrowing as if her refusal was an insult. "You'll change your mind." From that day, Jimmy began shadowing her. He cornered her in hallways, left expensive gifts on her desk, and whispered threats when she ignored him. Each rejection only seemed to fuel his obsession. At night, Diana returned to the mansion more exhausted than ever. Her job in the kitchen gave her peace compared to the cruel world of Daejeon, yet even here she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One evening, while cleaning the upper hallways, she passed by a locked door. The butler's warning rang in her mind, "Do not enter the master's room." She paused, curiosity tugging at her. Why was the room sealed, dust-free, as if its occupant had simply vanished? She turned away quickly, but a strange chill settled over her. The answer came sooner than she expected. A week later, the mansion stirred with sudden energy. Maids rushed about, gardeners trimmed hedges, and the kitchen buzzed with activity. Diana overheard whispers. "He's coming back. The young master. From America." Her stomach twisted. That night, while she was dusting the library, she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, deliberate. She turned, and for the briefest moment, her eyes met those of a stranger. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an aura of indifference wrapped around him like a cloak. His gaze was sharp, unreadable, yet something in it lingered on her face longer than it should have. It was him. Young Tae. The heir. The rebel son. The boy who would unravel her carefully built walls. Diana's breath caught. For the first time since arriving in Korea, she felt her world shift, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Hope. Sometimes the cruelest prisons are not built of walls, but of whispers. Diana had thought her scholarship to Daejeon High would be a miracle, a chance to finally belong. Instead, every step she took through its glittering hallways reminded her she was nothing but an intruder in a world polished by gold. Her uniform was clean but plain, her shoes not as glossy as the others, her accent a little different when she spoke Korean. It was enough. Students whispered as though she carried a disease. She's the maid from the Thai mansion, right? Why would the chairman waste a scholarship on her? Foreign blood, it doesn't belong here. Diana pretended not to hear, but inside, their words sliced her open. She had fought too hard to be here, to be reduced to nothing more than a joke. Still, she pushed forward. She kept her head down, scribbled notes diligently, and avoided the laughter that echoed down the marble corridors. But there was one voice she could not ignore. Diana. Jimmy's tone always dripped with arrogance. He had made it a habit to appear everywhere she was, leaning against her desk in the mornings, sitting too close during study hours, blocking her path in the cafeteria. I told you, I'm not interested, she repeated one afternoon as he cornered her near the stairwell. He smirked, leaning closer. You think you have a choice. Do you know who I am? You're someone who doesn't understand the word no, she shot back, surprising even herself. For the briefest moment, his smile faltered, and Diana saw something darker in his eyes. Possessiveness, the kind that wasn't playful, but dangerous. From that day on, the whispers around school grew louder. Rumors spread like wildfire, that she had lured Jimmy on purpose, that she was desperate for rich attention, that she was nothing but a gold digger with foreign charm. Diana knew exactly who was fueling those rumors. Bora. Bora was everything Diana was not. Beautiful, perfectly dressed, fluent in charm. The daughter of a wealthy family, she carried herself like a queen walking among servants. She had been engaged to Young Tae since before he left for America, and she wore that status like a crown. It didn't take long before Bora set her eyes on Diana. One morning, Diana entered class to find her desk surrounded by Snickers. Written across the top in lipstick were the words, "The maid's daughter." Bora stood at the front of the class, arms crossed, lips curved into a mocking smile. "Don't look so surprised," she said sweetly. "We just wanted to remind you of your place. You might wear the same uniform, but you'll never be one of us." Laughter erupted. Diana clenched her fists, blinking back the sting in her eyes. She refused to let them see her break. "I'm not here to be one of you," she said quietly, but firmly. "I'm here to study. That's all." The room fell silent for a moment. Bora's smile faltered before she waved dismissively. "How noble. But let's see how long that lasts." That night, back at the Thai mansion, Diana stood in the kitchen scrubbing dishes long after everyone else had gone to bed. The sting of Bora's words still echoed inside her. She didn't see the figure watching her from the doorway. Young Tae had returned earlier that day, and the mansion buzzed with his presence. The maids whispered about his charm, his defiance, his recklessness. He had always been the family's wild card, the heir who laughed at responsibility, the boy who ran from the weight of his name. Now, as he leaned against the doorway, his eyes caught the curve of Diana's shoulders as she worked, the determination in the way she scrubbed each plate as if fighting the world through her hands. He didn't speak, not yet. But something about her, the quiet strength, the defiance he glimpsed in her eyes when she finally turned and noticed him, pulled at him. For the first time since stepping foot back into Korea, Young Tae felt something unexpected. Interest. The next day at school, Jimmy cornered Diana again, his voice low and threatening. "Reject me all you want, but remember, this is my world." Girls like you don't survive here unless you belong to someone like me." Before Diana could respond, a calm, unfamiliar voice cut through the tension. "She doesn't belong to you." Both turned. Young Tae stood at the end of the hallway, hands casually in his pockets, eyes locked on Diana as if he had known her forever. The air thickened. Jimmy stiffened, clearly not expecting interference, especially not from the Thai heir himself. And Diana, she couldn't breathe. The boy from the mansion, the one whose gaze had unsettled her only days before, was standing here, defending her, his presence commanding the hallway like gravity itself. Her heart stuttered. She didn't know it yet, but this moment would be the first spark of a fire neither of them could put out. "Do you know what it feels like?" Diana whispered into the silence of her small room that night, "to be loved by someone the world insists you can't have?" The words sat heavy on her chest, like a secret too dangerous to release, yet too powerful to bury. Her heart ached with a strange sweetness, for though Young Tae's eyes followed her everywhere, and his small gestures betrayed his growing affection, she also knew the storm was gathering. The next morning, Daejeon High buzzed louder than usual. Word had spread like wildfire. Young Tae was back. Students, especially the privileged ones, whispered his name as though it was a crown heavier than gold. They admired his careless swagger, the silent authority that clung to him like a shadow. Yet there was another buzz too, a quieter one, a murmur that twisted Diana's stomach. "She's just a maid. How dare she? Did you see the way she looked at him? Bora will destroy her." The comments were daggers dressed as whispers. Diana walked with her books hugged tightly to her chest, her face neutral though her heart pounded. It wasn't long before the inevitable clash arrived. Jimmy, the notorious bully, blocked her path at the school courtyard. His smirk was sharp, his eyes brimming with arrogant confidence. "Diana," he drawled, tossing his basketball from one hand to the other. "Why do you keep ignoring me? Do you not realize what an honor it is for someone like me to even notice you?" Diana swallowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. She didn't want a scene. She didn't want trouble. But trouble clung to Jimmy the way shadows clung to night. "I'm not interested, Jimmy. Please, leave me alone." Her tone was firm but calm, yet her words only ignited the fire in his eyes. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Not interested? Don't fool yourself. You're a nobody, poor, insignificant, working in my classmate's house like a servant. Without people like me, you'll always stay invisible." And then, before Diana could respond, another voice cut through the air. "Is this how you treat women now, Jimmy?" All heads turned. Young Tae stood a few feet away, his eyes dark, his jaw clenched. His presence alone shifted the air, pulling silence over the courtyard. "Young Tae," Jimmy sneered, though the flicker of unease in his eyes betrayed him. "Stay out of this. This is between me and her." "No," Young Tae said coolly, stepping forward until he stood between Diana and Jimmy. "It's not. Because when you mess with her, you mess with me." The words were a bombshell. Gasps rippled through the courtyard. Diana's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing so violently she feared it might betray her feelings in front of everyone. Jimmy's smirk faltered. "So it's true," he spat. "The heir of Daejeon Group has fallen for the maid." The insult cut deep, the word made dripping with venom, and Diana felt her cheeks burn. But before shame could drown her, Young Tae spoke again. "Careful, Jimmy," he said in a voice low and dangerous. "Say another word, and you'll regret it." The courtyard froze in suspended silence. Jimmy's fists clenched, his pride wounded. But for the first time, he backed down, muttering curses as he stalked away. When the crowd finally dispersed, Young Tae turned to Diana. His expression softened instantly, his anger dissolving into something else, something raw, something unspoken. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, though her throat felt tight. "You shouldn't have done that." "Why not?" His brows furrowed. "Because," she hesitated, her voice trembling. "Because it makes everything harder. People will hate me more. They'll never let this go, Young Tae." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he said something she never expected. "Let them hate you, Diana. Let them whisper, let them sneer. I don't care. All I care about is you." Her breath caught, her hands trembling at his confession. She wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into those words like a soft dream. Yet a part of her whispered of danger, of the walls closing in, of the battle that was only beginning. That evening, Bora appeared. She cornered Diana near the lockers, her smile sharp as glass. "You really think you belong here, don't you?" Bora's voice was sugar laced with poison. "Don't fool yourself, Diana. You're nothing but a temporary amusement to Young Tae. His world is too big for someone as small as you." Diana's chest tightened, her nails digging into her palm. Bora's words weren't just cruel, they were calculated, meant to crush. And yet, for the first time, Diana lifted her chin and met Bora's eyes. "We'll see about that," she whispered, surprising even herself. That night, as Diana lay in her bed, her mind replayed Young Tae's words, "All I care about is you." Was it possible? Could love like this survive the weight of envy, power, and betrayal? The question lingered like smoke in the dark. What if love was never meant to be peaceful, but a battlefield where only the bravest survive? That question lingered in Diana's heart as her life at Daejeon High spiraled into chaos. The first few weeks of being with Young Tae had been like living in a dream. His world was so different: lavish cars, private dinners, hushed whispers of inheritance and family power. Yet in the midst of all that noise, he chose her. Diana still remembered the night he had walked her home beneath the autumn leaves, his fingers brushing against hers before he softly said, "Don't ever leave me, Diana. You're the only thing real in my life." But dreams have enemies. And their enemy had a face: Jimmy. Jimmy was not the kind of boy who accepted rejection lightly. Every attempt Diana made to brush him off only seemed to fan his obsession. He began cornering her in empty classrooms, whispering threats masked as sweet promises. "You think he'll choose you over his family?" Jimmy sneered one afternoon, his hand gripping her wrist so tightly that she winced. "You're a maid in his house. That's all you'll ever be. But me, my family could make you a queen." Diana pulled away, her voice steady despite the fear twisting in her stomach. "I don't want your crown, Jimmy. I'd rather be nothing than belong to someone like you." The slap of her words echoed louder than any sound in that empty hallway. And Jimmy, humiliated, furious, swore she would regret it. Meanwhile, Bora's jealousy reached boiling point. Watching Diana walk through the hallways with Young Tae, seeing his gaze soften every time he looked at her, it was unbearable. One morning, Bora cornered Diana in the cafeteria. With a smile sharp enough to cut, she spilled her venom. "You really think you belong here? You're nothing but a charity case. You wear second-hand uniforms, you eat food your boyfriend's family pays for, and yet you dare to dream of standing beside him?" The room had gone quiet. Students froze mid-bite, their eyes darting between the heiress and the girl from nowhere. Diana felt her throat tighten, but she refused to give Bora the satisfaction of breaking her. She lifted her chin and whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I don't need money to stand beside him. He chose me, not you." Bora's hand trembled, her nails digging into her palm. That single sentence wounded her deeper than any insult. But the cracks began to show in Young Tae too. The weight of his family's expectations pressed down on him every day. His father, stern and immovable, reminded him of his engagement to Bora. Business dinners turned into lectures, board meetings became threats. "Young Tae," his father said one evening over dinner, his voice like steel, "our family empire is not a toy. You will marry Bora, and you will secure this alliance. End this foolishness with the maid." The word stung. Maid. That was how his father saw Diana. And though Young Tae's heart raged against it, a tiny part of him wondered if loving her would destroy everything. That night, Diana noticed his distance. His laughter didn't reach his eyes, and when she touched his hand, he pulled it away too quickly. "Do you regret us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned to her, conflicted, his chest heaving with emotions he could not name. "I don't regret you. But I regret that loving you feels like betraying everything else." The silence that followed was colder than winter rain. Days later, the tension between Young Tae and Jimmy exploded. The two boys clashed in front of the entire school after Jimmy mocked Diana openly, calling her the maid who thought she was a queen. Before anyone could react, Young Tae's fist connected with Jimmy's jaw. The fight was brutal, years of rivalry and hatred spilling into punches and blood. Teachers rushed to break it apart, but not before Jimmy swore vengeance. "You'll lose her, Tae. One way or another, I'll make sure of it." Diana stood frozen, her heart pounding. For the first time, she realized that loving Young Tae wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. That night, as she sat by her small window, staring at the city lights, Diana whispered into the silence, "Am I strong enough to love him? Or will this love destroy us both?" The answer felt distant, but she knew one thing: the rift had begun, and it would only grow deeper. How do you fight a love that feels like destiny, yet stands on the edge of destruction? The question plagued Diana every time she closed her eyes. The taste of Young Tae's lips still lingered on hers, sweet and dangerous, like stolen honey from a forbidden hive. That kiss, so reckless, so full of longing, was no longer a secret. Whispers had already begun to echo through the cold hallways of Daejeon High. The poor girl from Nigeria, caught in the arms of the heir to one of the greatest empires in Korea. Diana could feel the eyes. Every step she took was shadowed by whispers, giggles, or sneers. Some students stared at her with envy, others with open disdain. She tried to ignore them, but the weight of their judgment pressed heavily on her chest. Still, she couldn't deny it. She loved Young Tae. And he loved her. That was the only truth she wanted to hold on to, no matter how fragile it seemed. But the world didn't let them breathe. That evening, while Diana was preparing dinner at the mansion, Bora entered the kitchen like a storm. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as though each step was a weapon. She stood across from Diana, her arms folded, her lips curled into a cruel smile. "So it's true," Bora said coldly, her eyes burning with disdain. "The maid has managed to seduce Young Tae. Tell me, Diana, do you think love makes you his equal?" Diana froze, her hands trembling as she held a chopping knife. She tried to speak, but words failed her. Bora stepped closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You'll never belong here," Bora whispered, venom dripping from her voice. "He's mine. His family knows it, I know it, and deep down, you know it too. You can play at love all you want, but when it's over, you'll still be nothing more than the poor foreigner who cleaned his room." Her words cut deeper than any blade. But before Diana could answer, Young Tae appeared in the doorway. His eyes locked on Bora, and his voice thundered through the silence. "Enough." Bora stiffened, startled by the raw anger in his tone. "She's not nothing," Young Tae said firmly, his voice laced with conviction. "She's everything." The room fell silent. Bora's eyes widened, trembling at the declaration, before fury overtook her. She stormed out, but not without spitting one final threat. "You'll regret this, both of you." Diana turned to Young Tae, her heart pounding. His words had shaken her to her core. She's everything. No one had ever said that about her before. No one had ever claimed her so openly, so fiercely. Tears welled in her eyes, but he reached for her hand, steadying her trembling fingers. "Young Tae," she whispered. He pulled her close, his breath warm against her ear. "Don't listen to her. Don't listen to any of them. It's just us now, Diana. Only us." In that fragile moment, Diana believed him. She wanted to believe him. She leaned into him, letting the warmth of his arms shield her from the storm of the world outside. But storms never sleep. The very next day, Jimmy struck. As Diana left the library late in the evening, she found herself cornered in the deserted courtyard. Jimmy leaned against the wall, his smirk sharp as a blade. His friends flanked him, forming a cage she couldn't escape. "You think you're special because Young Tae looks at you?" Jimmy sneered, stepping closer. "You're nothing but a distraction. A toy. Girls like you never last in our world." Diana tried to push past him, but he grabbed her wrist. His grip was rough, his eyes glinting with something dangerous. "If you were smart, you'd choose me. I can give you everything he won't." Before she could scream, a voice ripped through the night. "Let her go." Young Tae charged forward, his fists clenched, his rage burning hotter than fire. He yanked Jimmy away from Diana and shoved him hard against the wall. The courtyard exploded with chaos as punches were thrown, shouts echoing into the night. Jimmy fought back, but Young Tae's fury was unstoppable, fueled by a love he refused to let the world steal from him. Diana screamed for them to stop, but it was too late. The fight had drawn attention. Lights flicked on in the surrounding buildings. Students and staff began pouring into the courtyard, their eyes wide with shock at the scene. There, under the cold glow of the campus lamps, stood Young Tae, blood trickling from his lip, holding Diana protectively against his chest. The secret was out. Their love was no longer whispers. It was fire, burning brightly in the open for all to see, and for all to destroy. Diana trembled in his arms, her tears staining his shirt. "Young Tae, what have you done?" He kissed the top of her head, his voice a trembling vow. "I've chosen you. No matter what comes next, I've chosen you." But even as he said it, both of them knew the storm was only just beginning. Why does love feel like both salvation and war? Diana whispered to herself, staring at the reflection of the school's tall gates in the morning light. She had barely slept, replaying Bora's words over and over in her head. "You'll never be enough for him." Those words cut deeper than she wanted to admit. At Daejeon High, tension was no longer hidden. It dripped like poison into every hallway Diana walked through. Whispers followed her everywhere, laughter stung her ears, and the glares from Bora and her friends made her shoulders heavy. But despite it all, Diana's resolve grew stronger. If this was love, then she was ready to endure every storm for Young Tae. That morning, Diana tried to avoid the cafeteria, choosing instead to eat quietly in the library. But her peace was shattered when a familiar voice echoed across the shelves. "Running again, Diana?" Jimmy stood in the doorway, his lips curling into that same mischievous smirk. "Why hide? Don't you know you could have it easy with me? I could give you everything you're struggling to hold on to." Her fists clenched around her book. "Jimmy, how many times do I have to tell you? I'm not interested." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "No, you're not interested in me. But you'll happily cook in Young Tae's house, clean his room, and take his pity. You think he'll ever choose you over Bora? You're dreaming, Diana. And dreams like yours, they don't survive in this world." Before Diana could respond, the doors swung open. Young Tae walked in, his jaw tense, his eyes sharp with fury. He hadn't meant to overhear, but Jimmy's voice was too loud, too mocking. "Stay away from her," Young Tae said, his voice cold as steel. "This is the last time I'm warning you." Jimmy chuckled, unbothered. "Why? Because you think you can protect her forever? What happens when your family finds out you're risking everything for a girl who doesn't even belong in your world?" He leaned in, whispering just enough for Diana to hear. "One day, you'll regret choosing her." With a smug grin, he walked out, leaving a suffocating silence behind. Diana's hands trembled as she turned to Young Tae. "You shouldn't have done that. Now he'll hate you even more." "I don't care," Young Tae said firmly, stepping closer. His hand brushed against hers, grounding her. "What I can't stand is him making you feel like you don't belong. Because you do, Diana. With me." Her heart throbbed at his words, yet fear lingered. "But what if your family doesn't think the same?" He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away the tears she hadn't realized had fallen. "Then I'll fight them. I'll fight everyone if I have to. You're the only thing that makes me want to be better." For a moment, the world stopped, the air thick with unsaid promises, the library a secret shelter for their fragile love. Diana leaned into his touch, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then promise me, no matter what happens, you won't let go." "I promise," he breathed, sealing his vow with a kiss that was both desperate and tender, as if trying to convince her, and himself, that love could conquer the storms ahead. But storms had already begun to gather. That evening, Bora confronted Young Tae in front of the school gates, her voice laced with venom. "Do you think this is a game, Young Tae? Parading around with her like she's worthy of standing beside you? Bora, stop." "No." Bora's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her pride clashing with her desperation. "You were mine. You were supposed to marry me. Do you know what it feels like to be humiliated because of her?" Students gathered around, whispers spreading like wildfire. Diana froze at the edge of the crowd, her chest tightening as Bora's words cut into her like daggers. Young Tae's voice was calm but unyielding. "I never loved you, Bora. And I won't let anyone decide who I can and cannot love." The crowd gasped. Bora's face twisted with rage, but beneath it was heartbreak. "You'll regret this, Young Tae. Both of you will." Diana's heart pounded as Bora stormed away, her threat hanging in the air like a curse. Young Tae reached for Diana's hand, squeezing it as though he could shield her from the world. But even as their fingers intertwined, Diana knew their love had just painted a target on both their backs. And the battle for their hearts was only beginning. Would you give up the world for love? The question echoed in Diana's mind like a cruel whisper, as though the universe demanded an answer she wasn't ready to give. The weeks following Bora's cruel sabotage had been merciless. Diana's scholarship was under review after the scandalous photographs spread like wildfire across Daejeon High. Though the school board knew the accusations were fabricated, the stain of rumor clung stubbornly, and whispers trailed Diana's every step. The poor girl chasing after an heir, the opportunist. She had never felt so small. And yet, every time her gaze met Young Tae's across the crowded halls, she felt like she was standing on sacred ground. His presence alone was her shield, his words her only solace. But she also knew he was breaking. One evening, as twilight draped its purple veil across the sky, Diana was called to the family estate. Young Tae's father, Chairman Han, had returned from his overseas trip. The weight of that invitation pressed down on her chest like an iron chain. She had seen the coldness in his eyes before, when she worked quietly in the kitchen, eyes that measured people like numbers, stripping them of humanity. She stepped into the grand dining room, her hands trembling. Chairman Han sat at the head of the long oak table, Bora on his right, her smug smile sharp as a blade. Young Tae was beside her, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists under the table. "So you're the girl," Chairman Han said, his voice as icy as the crystal chandelier above them. "The one who distracts my son from his destiny." Diana lowered her head. "Sir, I never intended." "You never intended," Bora interrupted, her voice dripping with venom. "Yet here you are, eating scraps of his kindness like a stray dog. Do you think you belong in this world, Diana? Look at you. Look at us. You don't fit." The words sliced through Diana, but she stood still, her heart roaring in her chest. "Don't cry, don't give her the satisfaction." Young Tae slammed his hand on the table, the sound startling everyone. "That's enough, Bora." His voice was low, shaking with suppressed fury. He turned to his father. "You can insult me, but you don't get to humiliate her." Chairman Han's gaze hardened. "You think this is love, son? Love does not build empires. Love does not protect the legacy of generations. She will destroy you." "I don't want your empire," Young Tae shouted, his voice raw, trembling with emotion. "For once in my life, I've found something real. Someone who sees me, not the heir, not the name, not the power. Me. And I won't give that up." The silence that followed was suffocating. Bora's lips curled into a bitter smile, but her eyes glistened with rage. Chairman Han only leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. That night, Young Tae walked Diana back to her apartment. They said nothing until they reached the steps. The city lights painted his face with shadows, but she could see the war raging inside him. "Diana," his voice broke. He took her hands in his, gripping them as though they were his last anchor to the earth. "I can't promise I'll win against him. I can't promise the world won't tear us apart. But I swear to you, even if I lose everything, I'll never let go of you." Her tears finally spilled over, warm against the chill of the night air. She cupped his face in her palms, forcing him to look at her. "Young Tae, I don't need your empire. I don't need your wealth. I just need you. Even if the world burns around us, as long as I have you, I'll stand in the fire." He kissed her then, deep, desperate, the kind of kiss that tasted of defiance and broken promises, of a love both doomed and eternal. But as they held each other, neither saw the figure standing in the shadows of the alley, phone raised, recording every word. Bora's plan was far from over. And this time, her strike would be fatal. Would you give up your world for me, Young Tae? Diana's trembling voice echoed in his ears like a blade against his soul. The night air around Daejun High's garden felt heavy, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Young Tae looked at Diana's face. Her eyes were pools of fear and hope, her lips quivering with the weight of the question. For the first time in his life, he had no ready answer. Duty and love, two words that had never collided so violently within him until now. The day had started with whispers in the school hallways. Bora's voice was the loudest, venom dripping from her every word. "Do you know who she is?" she sneered in front of a group of students. "She's just a cook's daughter, a poor girl pretending to be one of us. She doesn't belong here, yet she dares to walk beside Young Tae as if she's his equal." Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp and cruel. Diana tried to walk past them, her books clutched tight against her chest, but Bora blocked her way. "You'll never be more than a passing shadow in his life, Diana. Girls like you don't get fairy tales." Diana held her tears back, forcing a faint smile. "Fairy tales aren't about wealth, Bora. They're about love." Then she walked away. But those words reached Young Tae, who had been standing at the end of the corridor. His fists clenched so hard that his nails dug into his palms. He wanted to storm toward Bora and shut her down, but Diana's calm dignity stopped him. She didn't need him to fight her battles, yet his heart raged against the injustice. That evening, Young Tae found her in the garden outside the main hall, staring at the sky. She looked fragile yet unbreakable, like a flame refusing to die in the wind. He walked up quietly, but she didn't turn. "I heard what Bora said," he whispered. "I'm used to it," Diana replied softly. "I've been mocked before. People always remind me of what I don't have." She finally looked at him, her eyes glistening. "But what hurts more is knowing what I could lose." He frowned. "Lose? Diana, you won't lose me." "You don't understand, Young Tae," she interrupted, her voice breaking. "Your family, your world, they'll never accept me. And Bora, she won't stop. I can't fight a war I was never meant to be part of." The fear in her voice stabbed at him. He reached out, pulling her into his arms, pressing her head against his chest. "Diana, listen to me. You're the only reason I want to fight. Before you, I didn't care about the company, about the future, about anything. But now, you've given me a reason. You've given me something real." Her tears fell onto his shirt. "Then answer me," she whispered. "Would you give up your world for me?" His silence stretched like an eternity. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to shout it into the night. But the weight of his family's expectations, the legacy of Daejun Group, and the chains of duty pressed down on him. Finally, he cupped her face and kissed her deeply, desperately. When they broke apart, his answer was a whisper. "If I must lose everything else to keep you, then I will. Because without you, Diana, my world is already empty." But fate was cruel. As they stood locked in that fragile embrace, a shadow watched from the distance. Bora. Her eyes burned with fury, her heart cracking under the weight of rejection. But it wasn't just Bora who knew now. Rumors of their relationship had already begun to seep into the school, carried on the lips of students who delighted in scandal. By the next morning, the whispers had reached the ears of Young Tae's father. And with one phone call, the storm Diana had feared was unleashed. "Would you still choose me if the whole world stood against us?" Diana's trembling voice echoed softly in the moonlit garden of the Jeguk estate, her eyes glistening with tears. It was the final night before Young Tae's father was set to announce his engagement to Bora. The pressure was suffocating, the air thick with the weight of decisions that could shatter hearts and futures. Young Tae stepped closer, his heart pounding like a war drum. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the careless heir who ignored responsibility. He was a man who had found a reason to fight. And that reason stood before him. Her name was Diana. "I would choose you 1,000 times, Diana," he whispered, his hands cupping her face. "Even if it costs me everything." Their lips met in a desperate, aching kiss, sealing a promise of love in the face of despair. But little did they know, Bora was standing in the shadows, her face contorted with heartbreak and fury. The next day, the grand ballroom of the Jeguk estate was filled with the city's most powerful families. The chandeliers glittered, violins played, and whispers spread like wildfire as Mr. Han, Young Tae's father, prepared to make the long-awaited announcement. Bora stood beside him, dressed in an elegant white gown, her head held high though her eyes betrayed the storm brewing within her. Diana had been ordered not to attend, yet Young Tae held her hand firmly, leading her into the room, silencing the crowd with his audacity. The moment was electric, suspense dripping from every corner. "Father," Young Tae said firmly, standing tall before everyone. "Before you speak, there's something I must say." Gasps echoed across the room. Mr. Han's eyes narrowed. "Young Tae, this is not the time." "It's the only time," Young Tae interrupted, his voice steady. He turned to the crowd. "I am not here to announce my engagement to Bora. I am here to tell you that I am in love with Diana Stephen. She may not be from a wealthy family, but she is the reason I've changed, the reason I'm ready to take responsibility for this company, for this family. And I will not let anyone tear us apart." The hall exploded in murmurs. Bora's face turned pale, her fingers clenching into fists. She looked at Diana with eyes sharp as daggers, then at Young Tae, her heart breaking into pieces. Mr. Han's rage was palpable. "You would humiliate this family for a girl who has nothing?" Diana, trembling, tried to pull her hand away, but Young Tae tightened his grip. "She is not nothing, father. She is everything." Silence followed. The words struck deep, leaving everyone breathless. For the first time, Mr. Han saw a son who wasn't running from responsibility but standing firm because of love. The tension stretched unbearably until, finally, he let out a long sigh. "Young Tae, if this is truly your choice, then you had better be ready to prove yourself worthy of it." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of trials. Rumors spread through Daejeon High like wildfire. Diana, the poor Nigerian girl, had stolen the heir's heart. Bora avoided them, nursing her broken pride in silence, while Jimmy disappeared into the background, defeated. Yet Diana and Young Tae grew stronger together, facing every insult, every disapproving glance, with their love as armor. Diana's scholarship blossomed into success, and she excelled in her studies, while Young Tae worked tirelessly to learn the ropes of his family business. For the first time, people began to see him not as a reckless heir but as a leader in the making. On a quiet evening beneath the cherry blossoms of Daejeon High, Young Tae knelt before Diana, his eyes soft with devotion. "Diana Stephen," he said, holding out a simple silver ring, "I once thought I had nothing to fight for. But then you came into my life. You are my strength, my dream, my home. Will you marry me?" Tears cascaded down her cheeks as she nodded, her heart swelling with joy. "Yes, Young Tae, 1,000 times, yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the petals fell around them like blessings from the heavens. Their love, once mocked, once forbidden, had triumphed over power, pride, and prejudice. And though the world had tried to keep them apart, they stood together, stronger, unbroken, and deeply, endlessly in love.